that would be. Oh, yes, we're recording, as you guys all know. And we also encourage you, if you're feeling brave, to put your camera on so we could actually see you. We find that makes a little more of a robust discussion sometimes. Okay, so jumping into topic one, we want to get your brains going post lunch. So if Fran, are we able to do polls? I can't remember if we can get that going in. Okay. Yep. Perfect. So poll number one, if you could just take a minute to fill that out, we're going to play some fun music while you're doing that to hopefully keep people entertained. And it's actually from a local band. Okay, since there are only a few of you, we probably can pull up the poll results. We'll just play that short bit. All right, so everybody worked together. Oh, yay, this is a great collaborative group in fundraising for COVID. That's great. Did you meet your fundraising goal for COVID? Split. So that's okay. It was kind of a moving target. And I'm gonna let Stephen kind of talk about what happened in Minneapolis, and also maybe you can provide a couple of anecdotes from Colorado too, since you just moved up here only 6 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of preference of that is, as I had said, I've made my way north, and I just moved up to Minneapolis from Colorado in February of this past year. So I'm speaking about the Minneapolis's COVID response, but I also have insight because I led it in Colorado, and there were actually a lot of similarities to what we did. But a beautiful thing about the Minneapolis Jewish community that worked out nicely for the COVID fundraising that we're talking about now is there had been the development and planning for a community-wide endowment that composed 3 parts that was supposed to launch in early 2020. And it actually did launch with a few of the lead gifts, but then in March of 2020, quickly pivoted. So before, we were about to try and raise $30 million for community endowment to help support the annual campaign and allocations to partner agencies. That was one portion. The other portion was security for our community security program. And the third portion was for our JCC campus in Minneapolis that houses the JCC, the day school, and some other organizations, including soon to be Federation when our space is built out and we move over there. So again, the community had been prepped to kind of for this big, huge campaign. The last time, it was decades ago, this type of campaign had been done, and some pre-work had been done, some feasibility studies to understand what was going on. And again, quickly pivoted in March of 2020 when COVID hit, and to scrap the JCC renovation piece and the community endowment piece. We did still keep the security piece, and a portion of every gift that was given for this new COVID campaign, which then became COVID and security, was split 80% to COVID funding, 20% to security needs, as the community prioritized security is still an ongoing need, even with all that was going on in COVID. So also because of the great work that has been done for decades before I arrived and Aline had arrived as well into our roles, the Federation had a good amount of unrestricted funding available. And in March of 2020, maybe late March, early April, Federation committed $3 million to get pushed out the door right away to over 40 community organizations that needed it. It was a pretty...
Before any fundraising happened at all.
Yeah, before any fundraising for COVID needs, it was just here. We know you guys are going to need some funding to get us through this because JCC's, the program revenue dried up, early childhood education centers, day schools, et cetera, et cetera. So over 40 organizations were funded locally, overseas, and also a big portion went to summer camps. Within the first few months of COVID, as probably in your communities as well realized, summer camp was not going to be able to happen, and they were refunding deposits and fees for the summer. And in order to operate, they really needed a heavy investment of funds. And Minneapolis Jewish Federation ended up putting $1 million to Herzl Camp, the largest local Jewish summer camp, overnight camp, I should say, but also day camps, and some other camps got it as well. So that was our initial funding piece. And again, we were able to do that because of the great work that had been done to really build up endowments and unrestricted funding for such a situation like this.
Well, and also, just to jump in, there was some relationship building that had happened prior to this too in Minneapolis. So maybe similarly in your communities, every community, Jewish community is different. We had leveraged building great relationships through the Life and Legacy program that we had ended just right before COVID hit. And that really built up some more trust between Federation and other Jewish organizations in the community and amongst the Jewish organizations. So when COVID hit, even though everyone was completely focused on let's keep our community afloat, there was no territorialism. You didn't have to get over personal conflicts or any issues like that, which is really, really great. So we were able to just jump right ahead, which was wonderful.
Yes, which again, that trust was key. Trust from donors as well in that too, that they wanted to support this type of work. So again, that was the funding piece. The other just part we wanted to touch on in our immediate COVID response was the kind of planning work that we did for the community. So here in Minneapolis, as PPP was kind of rolled out, we worked with Baker Tilly to conduct cash flow analyses for our community organizations, many of the smaller ones and some of the bigger ones as well, so that when they were able to apply for their PPP loans, their applications were better prepared and approved. And actually, on the call right now, the very own Amy Newman, if you see that box, she was able to help our organizations apply for their PPP loans. Their government funding is not easy to get and often complex and complicated, and Amy is a master at navigating that. So we helped provide our community organizations with that shared service of cash flow analyses and applying for funds. Amy, did I get that right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in on that. And it was with the help, well, primarily because of JFNA that we were able to help our local organizations, because they were unbelievable in providing the resources and guidance to help us navigate the PPP loans as well. So they were on top of things, like up to the minute. They had sessions going. So thank JFNA and all the great work that they did to let us help our local organizations.
Which is wonderful. So Amy became kind of our community expert on that, and we loaned her out to help organizations, which was fabulous. One of the other pivots also was at the foundation, which in our community, Federation Foundation are like this because we want to make sure we're always working in lockstep for the benefit of our community. And so at the same time, while Federation was sending money out the door, we were telling our 500 plus fund holders that have donor advised funds, or restricted purpose funds, or they had grant cycles for our larger funds with a table full of advisors making granting decisions. We were messaging consistently, send out as much money as you can, even if it's outside of your comfort level. To convince some of these bigger funds with advisory committees, we would help do the math and say, this fund has been around for 20 plus years, for example, and it's earned this much money. Even if you, sent extra money out to add to our Kadima COVID campaign or extra money out to the organizations, if ever there was a time to do it, this is now. And your fund is invested in the market and it'll come back in the long term. But if we don't send money out the door, some of these organizations may permanently go away. And so our community heard that and people were extremely generous. And because of that, not a single organization shut its doors in the Twin Cities, thank God. So we were really lucky for that. But I want to just pause here and ask if anybody on the phone has any questions or any stories from their community that they want to share with this group. Hillary, please go unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hillary. I'm from Delaware. I'm relatively new to the Federation, coming from the public sector, nonprofit program and development world. So a lot to learn and a lot to take in. But what you just said is like resonating a lot in the sense of an opportunity that we're trying to navigate through. We've had a lot of turnover. We're super small and understaffed, and not just as a federation, but statewide too, right? Like, but I like hear what you're saying about it. My part of my role is to kind of figure out how to work better with our community fund as a part of our federation, but it's not been like the opportunity for development in the sense that you're speaking of has not been fostered or implemented in a way that is more successful. And the thing that I keep coming up with in my mind and rolling over and figuring out how to kind of present this to the community as well and to my leadership is that as a small community, and like your campus, Stephen, ours is mostly JCC, Federation, JFS, we're all in one. And this obviously stays here, like our senior living facility is in need of cash right now. So we're working on that and trying to figure that out. And what you just said was like, well, if we've been planning for X and X doesn't seem like it's going to go through, what is plan B? You know, what's Y or plan B? And this gives me an idea to bring. So I'd love to get some more insight and detail on that.
Yeah, I would say if you guys have a planning, some planning folks at the Federation that you can use too, because I think what really helped in both Colorado and here was that Federation was able to understand with the work that we did with Baker Tilly and the organizations to understand what the community dollar needs actually were going to be. And we could then go to certain fund holders, as Aline was talking about, and say, we know the need is X, $30 million. You guys have made this much money over time, and these are what these funds are for. Help get us to that $30 million, which is a very different message than the elder care facility is going to go under, please support it. If there's some concrete numbers and background to it that you can go to some donors with who have donor advised funds or endowments, they're able to see the impact of their dollars more concretely.
Well, and I would supplement that by saying we focus in Minneapolis on understanding each one of our fund holders. We have over 1,000 funds. We have 14 Jewish organizations we hold endowments for, but we have almost 500 households that we work with. And we work really hard to understand what do they give to, what are their passions about, even if it's just a donor advised fund. Because with a restricted purpose fund, you can see what they're interested in. They set it up because they love Jewish puppies or whatever it is. But your donor advised fund holders, unless you analyze their grants, you may not know what their passions are. So relationship building with the donors is important. And then you know where to make targeted asks as well, right? If we know our Shalom home really needs cash, whether it's COVID or another time, then we can go to X, Y, and Z donor and say, there's this need. Do you want to fund it? It's not a guarantee that they would, but at least we can what we call match make with them. And that takes time and investment, but that is something that bears fruit all the time. It's a consistent process that really can help in terms of trying to find other potential, streams of revenue, so to speak.
And you had said, I just want to make sure I have this right. You've proposed it to the donor that you've made so much, you've made this money in the donor advised fund, and there's this gap in need in for this one, for this agency and this need.
Sometimes we
recommend,
put it in that term, or, we do it with at least one fund every year because the fund says we can grant up to 5% of the 12-quarter rolling average of our fund. And the donor is extremely conservative and usually 6 to 4%, even if the market has gone gangbusters. So we try to couch the conversation in the terms of, this is how much this fund has grown. So even if you grant out another $10,000, it's not even going to make a dent in the corpus of the fund. So you can use that argument in a variety of ways to try to be persuasive.
mm-hmm. No, I like that. Thank you so much.
And I'm a recovering attorney, so I don't like math. So I work with my finance folks to help me with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on board with that.
Yeah, but thanks, Larry. And one thing I should say that I didn't say at the top of that 45-minute short workshop is Stephen and my contact information is in our bios. And Fran, if you don't mind putting it into the chat as well. The best, as I said, resource we have are each other. So we're open to whatever questions come out of this. If you want to get into a deeper conversation, we're happy to answer questions, continue the conversation, whatever it is you need. Because sometimes you never know, there might be a nugget or something in what you're saying or what we're saying that can help each other. Welcome, Joel and Judy and Mindy. Thanks for joining.
Sure. Nice to meet you.
You guys might have jumped in the middle of the conversation about how we tackled COVID response, which, there's some nuggets in there that could just apply to any situation. But I want to make sure you all have a chance to ask any questions or offer any comments before we turn to our second topic shortly.
I'm good. I'm especially interested in the relationship with the foundation, and I'm on our foundation committee, and which we recently started, and have a fairly significant ambition here in Austin to drive that foundation work and the with donors and legacy giving and family give that type of thing, and then and my personal background, I mean, I've kind of gone through the ranks of like UJC cabinet and young leadership in different communities, and I'm on the way on the other side of that, and have been on the board here locally and kind of disengaged for a while. And for me, and I kind of just point out, like maybe even into this for those who are viewing the recording or whatever, that for me, the foundation, us really starting to look, we had a big capital campaign, so there's a lot of focus on that for the community, but now the attention is being put toward the foundation and legacy giving, and that's helped to get me re-engaged in the community, in a role that is meaningful to me. So, and in any case, that's kind of a little bit about me.
Oh, fabulous.
I think we'll get to that. I think we'll get to kind of what you want, some of your points about the disintegration and building up endowments and whatnot as our third point, which I think we'll get to in a little bit. And if we don't, Joel, we can talk afterwards as well, for sure.
Excellent. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any thoughts related to this particular topic? Let's make sure there isn't anything else in the chat. Let's see. Oh. Can you guys hear me? I'm echoing a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay. Fran, you could bring up the next slide so we can jump to the next topic. This is the Network of Philanthropic Advisors, which is an affinity group, as I mentioned at the beginning, for professional advisors in our community. And we started this a few years ago, modeled off of JCF San Diego's model, which they were the first to do this. And the whole point of the group is to provide in cross-industry networking for these folks, education around plan giving and how to talk with their clients, because these are accountants, attorneys, wealth advisors, trust advisors, private bankers. They may or may not get support from their own firms, or they need more support in how to have those conversations with their clients who are charitably inclined. And so in a sense, they're really the gatekeepers to some of these clients And our goal isn't to sell the foundation to them. It's really to help them help elevate these conversations in our community. If our foundation happens to align with their clients' values, and it's a place for them to open up a donor advised fund, that's wonderful. That's not our primary goal, but we of course consider that a bonus. So how this group is run is we run a series of workshops for advisors who are kind of early to mid-career, where we bring in speakers to talk about the nuts and bolts and kind of technical aspects of different plan giving vehicles, plan giving trends, and then we kind of get a little deeper in the third session into the vehicles and other things that might be useful for their practices. And we always try to have small breakout groups during these conversations, even though the two cohorts we've run have been on Zoom. We try to give them nuggets that they can put into practice right away. Our alumni events, which happen once they've quote unquote graduated from the workshops, we've just started those, and we had one in person. And it's great because that's in-person networking is fabulous. And that's one of the benefits for this particular group, because you don't really get to mingle cross industry otherwise. So it's creating a space, it's professional development. And we found it to be really great so far. So we have about 25 to 30 advisors who graduated from our program who we keep together in the alumni events. And we also try to work with Federation to cross promote it. Stephen, do you mind jumping in here to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the Federation side, we have some affinity groups. We have one of those being Cardozo Society, which is for lawyers. And obviously this doesn't pertain to like defense attorneys or prosecutors necessarily, but state and trust attorneys it does. So we haven't really gotten into the swing of it quite yet, but as this continues to go, one of our plans is to be able to add the value to our Cardozo Society. One of the value adds is the foundation's network of professional advisors, so that they understand the value of being a part of a Jewish community, and what Federation can provide in terms of their professional education and leadership, and continuing education as well.
And the advisors in our group, they do not have to be Jewish. They can be whomever, because it's really about serving the community. So I want to pull up a poll, if Frank could pull up a poll for those that are on the call. We're just curious, do your communities have any a version of the network of philanthropic advisors? Okay, have to throw in Minneapolis music. It's a must. Okay. Oh, so it looks like 75% do. That's fabulous. And I'm curious, for those that are willing to, Fran, we can take, if you don't mind pulling down the poll and the slide. For those that are brave enough to unmute, I'd love to know, did you use another community's model to create your affinity group? How did it get started?
I don't know the genesis of ours. I mean, in the sense that at our kickoff meeting this past month, there was a lot of excitement by the committee, by the subcommittee leader who's on the board, who's on this foundation committee, whatever board, and was put this together, and the belief is, and I think that, when you have people like that in your foundation leadership, they're seeing areas where, for instance, advisors might be missing tax law or certain, it's very, very specific. It's, kind of a newer trend for certainly those who are not super high net worth, right? And so these donor advised funds, and so they're finding that there's a real opportunity for education. And did you know, and so we've had some brainstorming even around trying to use that, call it affinity group, to get match up I might be bringing two different ideas together, but match up like BBYO kids and their parents, but with financial advice, with these advisors and talking and, getting one of these advisors to talk about planning and so on and so forth, and trying to get, again, for family giving. And so anyway, there's been some interesting activity there, and I certainly could connect you all with them, and I'm sure they would, be interested in hearing from you as well. But they're super high excitement from those people in that kind of affinity area.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because also then you start getting into family philanthropy, and we've started a family philanthropy service at our foundation, which we're hoping to make really robust. And we've started to think, how do we involve the NPA? Because not only do we want them to get education from us, but they can have exposure to our fund holders for those that need that type of advisor.
Yes.
Some do, some don't.
Yes.
But that's a great opportunity. So thanks, Joel, for mentioning that.
Sure.
I do want to give a plug for the San Diego Jewish Community Foundation. I will say they literally came in as consultants to us for a year. Charlene Wallach is the person who runs it there, and she is a powerhouse, amazing. She literally handed us the book on how to do this model. And they've done a few cohorts, so we could learn from the things that they wanted to improve upon, which is really great to leverage. And she is still supporting us in whatever questions and needs that we have, even though, technically the consulting contract is ended, and they are fantastic, and their model is wonderful. We of course are tweaking it along the way. We've hit a couple bumps this year, but it's also a good chance to re-engage with these advisors and talk with them about what are their needs and how can we support them, and build up trust, because they don't want to make recommendations to their clients to open up a fund with us unless there's a level of trust, a level of understanding, a level of what can the foundation offer to their clients. And we've been fortunate enough to have a couple of these advisors refer us to people who've opened up funds with us, so that's also wonderful. But I just want to turn to this group again to see if you have any examples from your community that you'd want to talk about with this group. Or thoughts.
There's a question here from Sydney, and Aline, you're the expert on this. Would you talk a little bit about what we've done with Foundation's family philanthropy services as well this year?
Yeah, so we really like consultants here in Minneapolis. We hired 2164, which now I can say they're internationally renowned as family philanthropy advisors. Raise your hand virtually, or otherwise if you've heard of them. I just want to get a sense of. Okay, so 2164, they used to be part of the Bronfman philanthropies, and they started the whole family philanthropy movement in the Jewish community, and then they actually spun out separately into their own organization, and now they do consulting. They also train the trainers. So we have a local trainer here. Her name is Robin Shine, and she has come in and run a variety of philanthropy workshops for our largest fund holders. And the goal with that was not only to give them a taste of what family philanthropy could be, but also to learn from them through interviews after the workshops, not only what they'd like to do in their own families, but what did they get out of the service, so that we can, pilot kind of a discrete series of services, a discrete group of services, so that we don't feel like we have to do everything all at once, but that we can provide a really high level of quality service to them in family philanthropy. So that was phase one. Phase two is now actually working with a handful of families this year to take them through, exercises that 2164 can provide to understand really, what are their goals in terms of family philanthropy, what is their family dynamic, because every family can be different, and sometimes parents and grandparents and grandchildren and children are involved, and they may see things differently. So when you're doing family philanthropy, you're not only facilitating as an advisor through the foundation or through your federation, but you might be a therapist. You might also be a mediator. You might also be a referee, and you have to be a little careful about where those lines are, because of course these folks are still your donors, and they're trusting you with understanding things they don't talk about in public, like family dynamics. So having 2164 there is in the background in year 2, they're coaching us along the way in those conversations so that we know how to handle those delicate situations. So I can't recommend them highly enough. They definitely are not cheap, but they are literally the best in the business. So that's what we're working on. So I want to stop, and we have 10 minutes left, but on this topic, do others have questions?
Yeah, so Joel, your point of under considerations around exploring offering a large CLE. So yes, I think one of the NPA type, whatever you call it in your specific community, program is one of those value adds, and those benefits can be continuing learning education. When I was in Tucson, we had a very similar program, and it was only over the summer. It was called the Summer Series, that insurance people, tax accountants, anyone who needed continuing learning, we had like 4 sessions throughout that they could sign up for an hour of networking, and then a workshop that they would get continuing learning education credits.
Right.
And it was really, it was sought after. It took a few years to build up the program, but then word of mouth is one of the best, as we all know, the best marketing there is. When a few people do it, as Aline's been talking about with our NPA, it starts small, then they start talking about how good it is, and then it's sought after, and people seek out the Jewish community, whether they're Jewish or not, but because of the value add that they're getting personally and professionally through that.
And we do offer continuing learning education credits for lawyers and for accountants for some of our content. They used to have, like, it used to be called something like the magic of estate planning, and not exactly magical, but it was a one-day session where it was 100 people in a room, but it was only one day. So you didn't really get a chance to build relationships with the advisors. It was more of, you were providing a one-off education opportunity. So through the NPA, we hope to build those relationships, sustain them in their practices. Continuing education will be a part of their alumni opportunities. And then it gives them a chance to opt in, because we want to make sure that whatever time they're spending with us is the most fruitful from an education standpoint, from a credit standpoint, from a networking standpoint. Because I remember when I was an attorney, I was billing per hour in 6-minute increments. So literally every 6 minutes needed to be something fruitful, or I wasn't going to do it. Oh, I'm sorry, Joel, go ahead.
Good.
And I see, Joel, that you put somebody's name.
So the woman who runs our, kind of NPA equivalent, whatever, is Janice. So, if you wanted to reach out to her directly, but I can, and I'm sure our, somebody from our, anyway, we'll connect. I'm sure they're interested in learning more about what you have. And I don't know if people from Austin attended. I think you did this yesterday too. These were concurrent. So anyway, if some others from Austin might have been on yesterday or not.
This is great. No, thank you for sharing that name. And if you, are willing to make an introduction, I'd love to talk with Janice and Stephen too, if that is something she's interested in.
Definitely.
Are there any others in the crowd who have a question or want to share something from their own professional advisors network experience that you think this group could leverage?
So I think maybe we can pivot to topic 3. We'll actually get to it in the last few minutes. I'll do a very high overview. Topic 3 is really now how we kind of integrate these things. So over the past few years, as we've been seeing, what we've talked about today has been building trust, the need for this value add from the foundation side of our work that really helps benefit the needs in the moment. If we're thinking back to the COVID funding that we're doing, what we're doing with MPA, we can see as a strategy to help build long-term trust in the community with donors, with advisors and whatnot. When we're talking about donor advised fund and endowment holders, talking to them about how it can help a current need. So with this, we here in Minneapolis, the lay leadership and executive leadership really believes in this integrated approach of philanthropy. One of the reasons that I was excited to take this role was to be able to do that, to not just look at Federation philanthropy as the annual campaign, as a transaction, or just foundation work as separate. We're really trying in the work we're doing here to be able to, as Eileen pointed out, talk with our donors, get to know our donors, and be able to have these relationships with them, that all of this stuff that we're talking about kind of fits together in a relationship-based philanthropic model rather than transaction-based. So one of our goals with that, that's the purpose of kind of what we're doing. And one of our goals with that is really to utilize those relationships to continue that trust in order to grow our donor advised funds and endowments for the annual campaign long term. Right now we're at, go ahead.
I'm sorry, and also to make sure that our donors, we call our fund holders clients and donors, philanthropic goals are being met and that we understand them. Because if you just talk to somebody only about their annual giving, you may have no idea that they have something that they want to put in their estate plan. Maybe they didn't know they loved Jewish puppies as much as they did until they went on a site visit to the Jewish Puppy Center through the foundation. And by getting to know your donor and really having those relationships, you can really make it even more fruitful and fulfilling for them, because you're providing a service as, you know, as what I like to call the SME, the subject matter expert, in telling them what opportunities there are that match up with their passions and their interests, including Federation, of course, right? A donor advised fund is a vehicle. It's not an end unto itself. It's a tool that grows charitable funds if you leave enough money in it, so people have more to give away, right? It's not a thing that is just an end to itself. So I think that's important to note. Stephen, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just
No, that was great. And to build off of that too, actually, just the last, because then we'll open up for a question or two. A strategy that we're using to integrate is to do education for all of our philanthropy staff who actually work with donors, as well as some lay leaders, so that there's a baseline knowledge that they can at least, if a question like this comes up in a conversation, they might not be the subject matter expert. That's what Aline and myself might be here for the planned giving aspects of it, but they're comfortable. And one of our goals is to make every person who works with donors comfortable enough to be able to broach a conversation on these topics. Or if it comes up in conversations, to recognize it and be able to pass it on. So that's a goal of ours as well.
Yeah, we tag team, as we say in our slide a lot. You know, if you need to bring in a SME, you need to bring in someone from the community impact side to talk about the Jewish puppies, because they really have that base of knowledge. Then it's really a full team approach, which is really appealed to some of our biggest donors. Do you all in your communities have a similar approach? Fran, do you mind taking the slide down, please? Thank you.
Do we have a similar what? You broke up.
Oh, a similar approach, or are you thinking about taking this approach?
So this is, again, super interesting to me, as it's something that I know we're trying to build our endowment, and it's kind of a gap or had been in the relationship side. And as a new person to the Federation, it's I'm finding a part of my challenge is that our database is just not great, right?
Oh, so that's a whole other conversation, Hillary.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm like starting with peanuts, and it's like, you know, trying to follow the breadcrumb trail of Hansel and Gretel through the forest. And it's like, who's got what, and you know, now that I'm there a couple months, I've kind of got some things down. And by the way, I have taken on another huge project of just trying to upgrade our tech and all of that and our CRM. and find endowment software, but like, I am coming back to, I have a family that is like heavily involved Federation family, and a great example in a lot of ways that we want to highlight some of what they've done. But so it's so interesting. There's among 3 of the family members, there's the Jewish funeral home ownership, the CPA, and an estate lawyer, an estate planner. So that's like prime leverage of like what you're saying, of like a core group and how to utilize them to benefit the Federation, right? Increase our donor advised funds, our endowments.
It's true.
And I'm just spinning that around how that like looks, and who else, obviously, like the other people that you had mentioned, but
Yeah, and having a donor's advisors around the table, if you're able to have a group conversation, is great, because they may not think of what the philanthropic advisor from the foundation might need to say. And they may not, we may not know what the accountant needs to say. And if you're talking together as a group, that holistic approach for their donor, for their client, our client and donor, really only benefits the donor to not be territorial. It benefits to not, to be coordinated in their best interest and save them money on whatever hourly bill they're going to get from all of these advisors. So you're not going back and forth. It's a little harder to accomplish sometimes, but that's an important point too. I just want to say it's 2:02 and we want to be respectful of your time so you guys can take a break before your next session. Stephen, do you have any last thoughts before we break?
No, I think that Fran, thank you for putting the websites in there. You guys can contact us afterwards. We're happy to continue brainstorming with you. This is some really good conversation. And we're really happy to continue the conversation at another time if you guys have more questions.
Yeah, and thank you for coming to our session. We hope you got a nugget or two that's helpful. It was really nice to meet you all. Hopefully one day we'll meet in person, and thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'll make that introduction. I will make that introduction to Janice for you.
Thank you, Joel. That'd be fabulous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, should I play music to play people out?
Yeah.
Town.
Fran, are you able to? There we go. Hasta la vista.